Her portrayal of the Queen was so good, Prince Harry called her for it and asked her for money. Like I said, I didn't write all these. That one's not right. Turns out Prince Harry and Meghan Markle will still get paid millions of dollars for doing absolutely nothing. And that's just by Netflix.
Camera then zoomed in on Netflix's CEO, Ted Sarandos. Both Prince Harry and Markle were not present at the awards show. Coy was addressing their Netflix documentary, Harry and Meghan, and the comedian's joke was considered brutal by viewers. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex signed an estimated $100 million deal with Netflix for their bombshell docuseries.
Welcome back to Clout Therapy, the place where we unpack Hollywood's messiest moments and internet's biggest scandals. Today, we're diving into a Golden Globes roast that had everyone talking. Joe Coy took the stage and threw shade straight at Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And let's just say, it wasn't your usual award show fluff. We're talking sharp jokes, awkward audience reactions, and headlines that spread like wildfire. But here's the twist. This wasn't just comedy. For the Sussexes, it might feel like a turning point, another crack in their already fragile public image. So let's break it all down. What Joe Coy said, how the room responded, and why this roast hit harder than anyone expected. If you love seeing Hollywood's carefully polished image get ripped apart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Joe Coy's Golden Globes night was the biggest opportunity of his career. Hosting the Globes is no small thing. It's Hollywood's high-stakes comedy stage, and the host is expected to set the tone for the entire night. The red carpet might get the headlines, but the opening monologue? That's where legends are made. Ricky Gervais turned it into an art form with his savage takedowns. And ever since, every host knows they need to roast the room or risk looking weak. So when Joe Coy stepped out, the pressure was sky high. Millions of people were watching, and the A-list crowd in front of him was waiting to see if he could deliver. And he did, by going straight for one of the most talked about couples in the world, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. The first jab came quick. Joe joked that Prince Harry was so desperate for cash, he probably called up the actress who played Queen Elizabeth on The Crown to ask for money. The timing was sharp, and the crowd roared. It wasn't just a surface-level laugh. It tapped into the awkward truth that Harry and Meghan's money situation has always been a hot topic. Every deal, every paycheck, every streaming contract gets picked apart. So hearing Joe reduce that whole conversation to a punchline, it landed in a way that was both funny and painfully real. But Joe didn't stop there. He doubled down with the line that made the room really shift. Harry and Meghan are still getting millions from Netflix for doing nothing. That's the moment that cut deep, because it wasn't just a joke, it was a mirror. For months, people in Hollywood have been whispering about the Sussexes' Netflix deal, wondering if the company actually got its money's worth. Their Spotify contract already collapsed, and the Netflix projects haven't exactly shaken the industry. Behind the smiles in the audience, there was a sense of recognition, like Joe had just said the quiet part out loud. The laughter that followed wasn't only about the comedy, it was a release of pent-up feelings, a collective acknowledgement that even inside the industry, people are tired of the Sussex brand. Joe Coy's jokes hit because they weren't just clever, they reflected the frustration, the gossip, and the eye rolls happening behind closed doors in Hollywood. And for Harry and Meghan, that had to sting. Because when the Globes crowd is laughing at you instead of with you, it's not just comedy anymore. It's a shift in how the industry sees you. That paid for doing nothing line wasn't just a punchline. It was the match that set everything off. Because underneath the comedy, it tapped into something Hollywood has been grumbling about for a long time. Meghan and Harry landed that $100 million Netflix deal, promised big projects, and outside of one docuseries, not much to show for it. Insiders have whispered that the couple got rewarded with superstar money without putting in superstar work, and that resentment has been bubbling for years. So when Joe Coy dropped the joke, the room lit up. Some stars laughed big, Others gave that tight smile, and a few just side-eyed each other like, did he really go there? The cameras caught it all. The chuckles, the smirks, the little reactions that told you the joke landed differently for everyone in the room. It wasn't just funny, it was uncomfortable. The kind of laugh people give when they know there's truth under the punchline. And that's what made this moment so wild. Up until now, roasting Harry and Meghan at a huge event was almost a no-go. Most celebrities kept it polite, kept it safe, because the couple was still wrapped in this bubble of sympathy and royal fascination. But Joe Coy broke that bubble. He cracked the taboo wide open. By mocking them so directly, he gave Hollywood permission to stop tiptoeing, permission to laugh, permission to say out loud what's been whispered behind closed doors. And once that line is crossed, there's no walking it back. The morning after the Globes, the headlines hit fast. Every outlet was running with the same angle. Joe Coy goes in on Meghan and Harry. That one monologue line became the clip of the night. Social media ran wild with it. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. Some fans were cheering, calling Joe a legend for saying what everyone was thinking. Others slammed him, saying it was unfair, even cruel, to drag Meghan and Harry like that on such a big stage. But love it or hate it, people couldn't stop talking about it, and the media made sure it didn't die down. Entertainment pundits replayed the paid-for-doing-nothing joke again and again, analyzing every beat like it was a political debate. On talk shows, reporters debated whether Joe was out of line or just spot on. The clip kept rolling, and the laughter in the room became part of the story. And that's where the real shift happened. Because suddenly, Harry and Meghan weren't untouchable anymore. They weren't wrapped in the royal bubble. Overnight, they became roast material, the kind of celebrities the industry feels free to laugh at. And once Hollywood starts laughing at you instead of with you, that's a brand problem no amount of PR can cover up. When the dust settled after Joe Coy's monologue, everyone had the same question. How would Harry and Meghan respond? And the answer was silence. No official statement, no fiery rebuttal, not even a carefully worded Instagram post. And that silence was almost as loud as the jokes themselves. PR experts immediately weighed in, saying this was a classic case of damage control. Because think about it, if Harry and Meghan had fired back, they would have turned one awkward comedy bit into a week-long headline war. The media would have milked it non-stop. Comedians would have doubled down, and suddenly the couple would have looked even more defensive. Staying quiet, in theory, cuts the oxygen off before the flames spread. But that doesn't mean nothing happened. Within days, subtle signals started to appear. Certain outlets sympathetic to the Sussexes began running pieces that painted them as victims, once again, targeted by Hollywood's cruelty. Articles hinted that Meghan, in particular, was unfairly singled out, while Harry got dragged along for the ride. It wasn't their voices directly, but the spin was obvious. Their silence was being filled by others speaking for them. Almost like a quiet PR push to frame the story without actually addressing it head-on. And that's where the debate kicks in, because silence can be powerful, but it can also be risky. Fans are asking, should they clap back? Should Meghan and Harry take control of the narrative and prove they're not afraid of a few jokes? Or does that just hand more power to the comedians and the tabloids who feed off their reactions? On one hand, ignoring it might make the story fade faster. On the other, staying silent might make them look weak, like they can't defend themselves. And when you're already struggling with your brand in Hollywood, every move, or lack of one, gets magnified. Now, let's flip the script and look at it from Joe Coy's perspective. Why did he pick Harry and Meghan as one of his biggest targets? Simple. They're instantly recognizable. He didn't have to explain who they were or why they mattered. One quick setup, and the whole room got it. In comedy, that's gold. And beyond that, their entire public image is practically begging to be roasted. Privacy versus publicity. Victims versus celebrities. It's a contradiction that's been memed, mocked, and debated for years. And on a stage like the Golden Globes, it's a guaranteed laugh line. And then there's the Netflix deal. In a room full of Hollywood power players, that was the perfect nerve to hit. Because a lot of those people sitting in the audience know exactly how much money Netflix shelled out. And they've been whispering the same thing Joe said. Are Harry and Meghan really delivering on what they promised? By turning that private frustration into a public punchline, Joe scored one of the night's biggest reactions. But here's where the debate comes in. Did Joe Coy punch down by targeting a couple who already feel hounded by the press? Or was he just capturing the truth about how the industry actually sees them now? That's the tightrope comedians walk at shows like this. They test the waters of public opinion. They say the quiet part out loud, and they measure how the crowd reacts. And judging by those laughs, that night proved something big. In Hollywood, Harry and Meghan aren't off limits anymore. Here's the thing, Joe Coy doesn't actually have beef with Harry and Meghan. This wasn't personal. What his jokes really did was shine a light on the growing tension between the Sussexes and Hollywood itself. Remember how different it was at first? When they stepped back from the royals, Hollywood welcomed them with open arms. Oprah gave them the interview of the decade. Netflix wrote a 9-figure check. Spotify signed them for a podcast deal. For a while, Meghan and Harry were treated like they just brought fresh star power to the industry. But over time, the shine started to fade. The big projects didn't deliver. The Spotify deal fizzled. And now the Netflix contract feels more like an obligation than a triumph. That's why Joe Coy's roast hit so hard. He didn't invent the criticism. He just said what Hollywood has been quietly whispering. So no, this isn't about Joe versus the Sussexes. It's about a bigger gap. Their self-image as groundbreaking global icons versus the industry's growing impatience with promises that haven't really panned out. And this is where the story gets bigger than just one night of jokes. Comedy has always been Hollywood's truth serum. When a line lands this hard, it usually means it's touching something real. Joe Coy's "paid for doing nothing" didn't just get laughs because it was clever. It hit because people already believed it. And that's the danger for the Sussexes. When comedians start joking about you this openly, it shifts how the public sees you. We've seen it before. Ricky Gervais at the Globes tearing into Hollywood's hypocrisy. That changed the way stars were talked about. Chris Rock's Oscars monologue, hammering the lack of diversity, that forced a real conversation. Those moments lived far beyond the stage. Joe Coy's roast of Harry and Meghan feels like it could be the same thing. It wasn't just entertainment, it was a cultural marker. A turning point where the Sussexes stopped being untouchable and started being fair game. And once the jokes take hold, that reputation is almost impossible to shake. Joe Coy's roast turned into millions of views, endless headlines, and maybe the start of Harry and Meghan's toughest chapter in Hollywood yet. What started as a few punchlines might have cracked their image wide open. So here's the question. Was Joe Coy just doing his job as a comedian? Or did he officially end the Sussexes' honeymoon period in Hollywood? Let me know in the comments. If you were Meghan and Harry, would you laugh it off? Or would you see it as a shot across the bow?